The Wyoming winter isn't just scenery, it's an enemy. The wind cuts like a knife, the snow blinds like a curse, and the silence is so heavy it feels alive. In Tarantino's tale, the blizzard isn't background, it's a character, a merciless, impartial executioner that traps men and women together and strips away their illusions until nothing is left but blood and truth. Through this storm rides John Ruth, better known as the Hangman. His stagecoach trudges slowly across the frozen wasteland, wheels sinking into the drifts, horses gasping in the biting air. Inside, Ruth sits chained to his prize, Daisy Domergue, a foul-mouthed outlaw with a bounty of $10,000 on her head. Unlike most bounty hunters who prefer corpses, Ruth takes pride in delivering his captives alive. Not because he's merciful, far from it. John wants to see justice play out with his own eyes. He wants to watch the rope tighten around their neck. To him, a bounty isn't complete until the noose snaps. That's why he's called the Hangman. But this journey isn't just a delivery. It feels like a funeral procession. Every creak of the coach, every rattle of the chains between Ruth and Daisy is a grim reminder that the gallows of Red Rock are waiting. Daisy knows it. That's why she mocks, spits, and laughs. She's chained, but she's dangerous. Her power lies not in her hands, but in her words, the venom she injects into the minds of those around her. The storm howls and suddenly a dark figure appears ahead, perched on a pile of frozen corpses. This is Major Marquis Warren, once a Union officer, now a feared bounty hunter, whose legend is known across the frontier. 3 bodies lie at his feet, men he killed for their bounties. And in his pocket, he carries something that grants him more than a reputation, a letter from President Abraham Lincoln himself, commending his courage and friendship. That letter is more than paper, it's armor. In a country still bleeding from the Civil War, a black man's survival often depends on how much respect, or fear, he can command. To strangers, the letter proves Warren's honor. To Warren, it's a weapon as powerful as his revolver. Later, we'll learn its shocking truth, but for now it works. John Ruth sees it and grudgingly accepts Warren into the coach. The stagecoach is now a powder keg. John Ruth, suspicious, brutal, and proud. Marquis Warren, cunning, sharp, and scarred by war. And Daisy Domergue, laughing like a devil chained to her executioner. When Ruth brags about Warren's letter, Daisy spits on it, a deliberate move to wound Warren's pride. His reaction is instant. He smashes his fist across her face. But here's the hidden layer. That punch isn't just violence. It's Warren demanding respect in a world that still treats him as less than human. And Daisy? She knows exactly what she's doing. She's probing, testing, trying to break her captors from the inside. Her only weapon is chaos, and she uses it like a knife. The fragile balance shatters further when another figure appears in the storm. Chris Mannix. He's brash, arrogant, and claims to be the new sheriff of Red Rock, the very town where Ruth plans to collect his bounty. But there's a catch. Mannix was once part of a Southern militia infamous for massacring black Union soldiers, the same men who fought against Warren. His sudden appearance feels too convenient, too perfect. But in a storm like this, Ruth and Warren have no choice. If he really is sheriff, leaving him behind could mean losing their bounties. So Mannix joins the ride, and now the stagecoach is something more. A crucible. 4 souls bound by chains of law, vengeance, and deception, rattling toward an outpost in the middle of nowhere. The storm outside rages, but the storm inside has only begun to build. Minnie's Haberdashery. The blizzard grows merciless. Snowflakes whip against the stagecoach like shards of glass. By the time Ruth, Warren, Daisy, and Mannix arrive at Minnie's Haberdashery, the cabin doesn't feel like shelter. It feels like destiny. A small wooden outpost in the middle of nowhere, its windows shuttered, its smoke barely visible in the storm. Normally, Minnie's is a place of warmth and welcome, famous for her stew and open hospitality. But as soon as the door creaks open, something feels wrong. The air inside is heavy, the atmosphere too quiet. Instead of Minnie's cheerful presence, the group finds strangers occupying the space. There's Bob, who claims Minnie left him in charge while she went to visit her mother. He's taciturn, gruff, and his eyes dart too quickly, as if hiding something. Then Oswaldo Mowbray, a small, eccentric Englishman who introduces himself as Red Rock's official hangman. He speaks with theatrical flair, carrying himself like a man who delights in the sound of his own voice. There's Joe Gage, a cowboy who sits in the corner writing in a journal, silent but unsettling, like a shadow watching everything. And finally, General Sanford Smithers, an aging Confederate officer whose mere presence reopens the wounds of the Civil War. Each man looks ordinary at first glance, but to John Ruth, every gesture is a red flag. He didn't earn his nickname, the Hangman, by being naive. He notices too much. Minnie's absence, the oddly calm atmosphere, the fact that no one seems surprised by their arrival. Daisy, chained and grinning, notices it too, and she loves it. For the first time, she senses that the balance of power might be shifting in her favor. Inside the single-room cabin, Tarantino creates a pressure cooker. The walls feel closer with every exchange of words. Ruth, paranoid as ever, insists everyone disarm. He collects their guns, dismantling them carefully, piece by piece. It's his way of asserting dominance, of reminding everyone that the law, his law, rules here. But even as the weapons pile up, tension doesn't decrease. It multiplies. Because in Minnie's haberdashery, words cut sharper than bullets. During dinner, Warren locks eyes with General Smithers. Their history is already written in the scars of the nation. Warren, a black Union officer who fought for freedom. Smithers, a Southern general who once owned slaves and whose son fought for the Confederacy. Their conversation begins polite, but quickly transforms into a duel of memories, hate, and pride. Warren decides to tear down the facade. He tells the old general exactly how his son died. In a chilling, deliberate monologue, Warren describes how he captured Smithers' boy, stripped him of dignity, and forced him to march naked through the snow before killing him. The story is horrifying, humiliating, and most likely exaggerated, if not invented outright. But that's not the point. The point is psychological warfare. Warren wants Smithers to draw his gun to give him an excuse, and it works. Shaking with rage, Smithers reaches for his pistol, only to be shot dead instantly. This moment is key. Warren doesn't just kill a man, he asserts control over the entire room. He shows everyone that in this cabin, survival doesn't come from words of honor, but from the ability to dominate through fear. Daisy cackles with delight, her teeth bloody from earlier blows, because every death weakens John Ruth's control. Everybody on the floor brings her one step closer to freedom. The poisoned coffee. The cabin grows colder. The blizzard outside howls like a monster, and inside the poison seeps deeper, not just into the air, but into the coffee. Someone has tampered with the pot. Ruth drinks first, coughing violently as his stomach twists. The coach driver follows, collapsing in agony. When Mannix raises his cup, Ruth manages to shout a warning, and the coffee splatters across the floor. Chaos erupts. Ruth, staggering and vomiting blood, realizes Daisy's hand in this scheme. His fury is volcanic. He beats her savagely, desperate to maintain control even as his life drains away. But Daisy's grin never falters. She knows the tide has turned. Her gang is near. The poisoned coffee is just the opening move. And then, the mastermind reveals himself. From beneath the floorboards, Jody Domergue, Daisy's brother, bursts forth, revolver blazing. Bullets rip through Warren's side, dropping him to the ground. The truth finally comes crashing down. Minnie and her family were slaughtered days ago. The gang took over the cabin, lying in wait. Everything has been leading to this ambush. Joe Gage and Bob, who had been sitting so quietly, suddenly show their true allegiance. They're part of Daisy's crew, each complicit in the takeover. The facade of strangers was nothing more than a performance. The cabin wasn't a shelter, it was a stage. And now the curtain rises on the massacre. The final standoff. Even as Warren bleeds, even as Ruth gasps his final breaths, the game of deception continues. Daisy, grinning through broken teeth, tells Chris Mannix that she has an army of 15 outlaws waiting just outside the blizzard. If he sides with her, he'll live. If he doesn't, he'll hang alongside the others. Mannix, the supposed sheriff of Red Rock, finds himself at the crossroads of survival and honor. He's no hero. He was once a Confederate marauder, his hands stained with innocent blood. But here, in this cabin of liars, killers, and opportunists, he sees a chance to redeem himself. Against all odds, he sides with Warren. The two men, former enemies from opposite sides of the Civil War, become allies in the face of chaos. The standoff explodes into violence. Guns blaze. Bodies drop. Bob is riddled with bullets, his lies silenced. Joe Gage makes a desperate move but falls in a hail of fire. Jody, Daisy's brother, is dragged up from the cellar, trembling, knowing his plan has collapsed. Warren doesn't hesitate. He puts a bullet through Jody's head. Daisy, still shackled, remains defiant. Bloodied but unbroken, she mocks them, reminding Mannix and Warren that her gang is still out there. But the two men, battered and bleeding, have made their choice. They won't hand her over. They won't let her escape. They'll finish John Ruth's job. In the film's final, grotesque poetry, they string Daisy up with the very chain that bound her to Ruth. She thrashes, cursing, spitting, fighting until the last breath. But the noose does its work. Slowly she dies, not with the bang of a bullet, but with the quiet cruelty of the rope. The last laugh. For Warren and Mannix, it's not victory, it's exhaustion. They're both mortally wounded, their bodies broken, their futures sealed. But there's a grim satisfaction in the act. For once, the law, twisted, bloody, imperfect, was carried out exactly as John Ruth intended. The hangman's justice lives on. As the blizzard screams outside, the cabin falls into silence. The floor is slick with blood, the tables overturned, the walls scarred by bullets. The only sound left is the labored breathing of two dying men. Warren, with his final strength, pulls out Abraham Lincoln's letter, the same letter that gave him credibility, that protected him, that John Ruth once admired. He hands it to Mannix. Mannix reads it aloud, his voice cracking with fatigue. For a brief, almost tender moment, the words of the president seem to sanctify their grotesque alliance. But then, the truth lands. The letter was fake all along, a fabrication Warren used to gain respect in a world that offered him none. And yet, in this cabin of liars, betrayal, and murder, the fake letter becomes real. Not in history, but in meaning. For Warren and Mannix, those words, phony as they are, become the final bond between them. They share a bitter laugh, the sound of two men who know they won't see another sunrise. Themes and meaning. What makes the Hateful Eight unforgettable isn't just the bloodshed, it's the anatomy of mistrust. Minnie's Haberdashery becomes a microcosm of America itself, a fractured nation, still at war with itself long after the guns of Gettysburg went silent. Warren, the black Union soldier who fabricates dignity in a world that denies him any. Mannix, the bitter Confederate, torn between legacy and survival. John Ruth, clinging to his twisted sense of law and justice. Daisy, the embodiment of chaos, mocking all codes, driven only by destruction. Even the Lincoln letter, a lie, serves as the perfect metaphor. In America, ideals often matter more than truth. The nation was built not on what is, but on what people choose to believe. Ennio Morricone's score drives this home. Its creeping strings and ominous swells aren't the triumphant notes of a Western. They're the dirge of paranoia, a constant reminder that death is always one step away. His music makes the silence unbearable. His dissonance mirrors the lies poisoning the room. Tarantino crafts the film like a stage play, claustrophobic, theatrical, drenched in dialogue. But every word is a bullet waiting to fire. When the guns finally go off, it's not catharsis, it's inevitability. And as the storm rages on, the message becomes clear. In a world built on hate and greed, trust is an illusion, and survival is never guaranteed.